Hello everyone, Lawrence here with a very different but interesting all-in-one device for the beginning streamer, podcaster or shopper. Wait, shopper? I don't quite understand that part either. To be honest, there were many things I did not understand when I first tried the Synido Life 100. I gave these guys a very hard time over email about poor documentation and strange product decisions, but these guys were always quick to reply and they seemed very confident in the Synido Life 100, so here we go. What's nice is the Synido Life 100 is actually a kit, so it comes with both the interface but also the microphone and a shock mount and a cable and a mount for the shock mount and a bunch of other little cables and even some cheapo earbuds. This entire video, unless mentioned otherwise, was recorded over the Synido Life 100, but with the Audio-Technica AT2020 microphone, because as far as I'm aware, this is still the most popular streaming microphone on the market. However, we will compare the AT2020 to the included microphone and even a cheap USB microphone later on. Before I get to that though, let's do a physical overview of this very striking looking audio device. This very bold choice to go with purple and orange sure stands out, but fear not, a black version should be available for those who want a more professional looking device. The entire audio interface is made from aluminium and weighs just under 1 kilogram. The build quality feels excellent. There's little to no wobble to any of the dials, and even the XLR port at the back feels pretty sturdy. However, the buttons on here are the mushiest membrane keys that I've ever felt. At the back you'll find all the important stuff. So there's USB-C to connect to your computer, but there's also a USB-C port for use with a wall charger or a battery bank. Now this is great for when you're on the go. However, other devices that want to be portable do have a battery built in, and I would like to see a built-in battery into this device as well. There's a line in and line out along with 3 live mixes. There's also a headphone port and input for both XLR and instruments. However, I would prefer if the XLR port and the instrument port were just combo jacks and you got 2 of those, so you could actually use 2 separate devices. On the bright side though, the XLR port does have 48 volt phantom power, which is great for use with, for example, the AT2020. There's also another microphone port and there's a power on and off button, which I personally think is a great feature. The I/O doesn't stop there, so on the front are 2 more microphone ports, mic 1 and mic 2, but there's also a headphone and headset jack, so that's basically 3 microphone jacks on the front as well. All of these are 3.5 millimeter. Now, while the I/O on this device looks incredibly impressive on paper, the sad truth is that all of these inputs and outputs are linked to each other. There's no way to control the volume for these ports individually. Mic 1, mic 2, headset, XLR mic and the other rear mic are all controlled with the same massive dial on the top. No individual control over each microphone. So if you want to do a podcast with multiple people, you better make sure you're both talking into the same microphone and you're both talking exactly at the same loudness. Further, the line in and instrument jacks are also combined into the same line in instrument dial, so you can only control the loudness of one, and this effectively gives you 2 audio inputs of which you can control the volume. The same goes for the output, so you get this massive monitoring volume dial, but this controls all of the headphone outputs, and then you also get the live volume, which controls all 3 live outputs. And the crazy amount of useless options doesn't end here. The electro button, for example, will cycle you through 12 different sound modifiers to your microphone. While this is great fun to experiment with for 5 minutes, I personally think it's more of a gimmick, and I don't really think anyone will ever use it more than once or twice, or maybe a third time when they're just making fun of this feature. Next to the electro settings are 6 reverb settings. I personally just leave it on dry because this doesn't modify the reverb in any sort of way, which is the way I personally want it. But also, while I could hear a difference in the reverb settings on my monitoring headphones, I could not hear a difference when I'm actually recording into Audacity over USB-C. What does seem to work is the treble and bass dial, so you can modify the way your microphone sounds just a little bit. It's very nice, very subtle, and it actually works. There's also an echo dial, which I just set to minimum and I refuse to touch. There are also 9 BGM or background music buttons. 6 of these cannot be configured, they're pre-configured, they have some sounds to them, but 3 of these are customizable up to 15 seconds in length. And so you just long press the button you want to customize, talk into your microphone or play back some music on your computer. In order to do this, you'll have to crank up line and the live volume dial at the same time. Hold the button, when you let go it stops recording, and then you can replay this little bit of audio as you please. I would personally just prefer if you could do this in software and just drag and drop a sound clip. That would make so much more sense. And I would also prefer to have every button remappable. Moving even further to the right are 6 voice changer buttons. And honestly, these can be maybe cool to do some prank calls or something. But then out of all these buttons, there are 4 buttons which you may actually use, and they're smaller than all the other ones. They're in the right bottom. We'll start with denoise. So you have 3 levels plus off for denoising. And this will basically remove noise when you're not talking. While you are talking, you still get the same amount of input noise. So it basically just shuts down the preamp while it's not really noticing any volume going in. Talking about these preamps, by the way, as you can probably hear, because I'm not post-processing any of this, is they're pretty noisy preamps, especially this is just an AT2020, a fairly easy to drive microphone. And then next to denoise is dodge, and this is a very nice button to have. Basically, when you use this thing as an audio output, you'll have music playing in the background, but when you talk, you may want to lower the volume of this music, and that's where the dodge button comes in. When you talk, the music volume will drop. This is not configurable, so you can't choose how many decibels it drops or which inputs it drops. And the software doesn't really allow for that either, but it is a very nice thing to have when you're just talking every now and then when playing video games and you want the video game noise to be slightly lower at that point in time. There's also a voice cut button. This button basically cuts out the voice out of music, so it becomes a karaoke machine. It's a nice feature for those who are into karaoke. I personally only just tried it to make sure it works for this video, and it does work. And then the most important button of all is the loop back button. This means that if you use USB audio output in the Synido Live 100, it will re-record it or loop it back into the microphone output over USB as well. If you don't have the loopback enabled, dodge, for example, will not work because, well, it's not actively adjusting your audio outputs from other devices. So make sure loopback is enabled if you're going to be using the dodge button. Now, a really cool feature to go along with the insane amount of inputs and outputs, but also the fact that you can just power it with a phone charger or a battery bank, is the Bluetooth. You can connect 3 Bluetooth 5.0 devices at the same time and use those as 3 extra inputs. And because of how Bluetooth input works, you can actually adjust how loud each Bluetooth input is. So you can grab your phone and use it to play back music and actually control how loud it is. Of course, the first thing I wanted to try with this is order fast food in super high voice quality, but sadly it doesn't work as a microphone input over Bluetooth. So no food for me. Honestly, all these little things have made the Synido Live 100 a very disappointing device to me. It showed a lot of promise, but I have not even begun to discuss things like the useless software or the fact that because they tilted the entire board, the front I/O, for example, is angled downwards. So if you have very long connectors on your headphones, for example, they'll push against the table, and it also just makes it hard to plug them in or out. So at this point, sure, it's got some quirks, but you're probably thinking you can still perfectly use it as an XLR interface for your microphones because it has that phantom power. But as you heard already, the preamps aren't great. Not to spoil the conclusion of this video, but it seems like Synido absolutely agrees with what I had to say at the end. They slashed their pricing from $200 discounted to $180 to now $120 discounted to only $100, which of course changes my outlook on this device dramatically. And at $180, I think it's way too expensive for what it is. Sure, it's a kit and it does come with that microphone and a bunch of cables and some horrible little in-ears, but it's just not worth it. If it were half the price or maybe slightly, like around the $100 mark, I would probably consider it, but at this point it's just a bunch of gimmicks that I'll never actually use. What really turned this device from meh to ugh to me personally is the fact that you cannot disable the mic monitoring. So if you want to monitor everything except you don't want to constantly hear your own voice while you're talking, there's no button for that. This is a sound test with the Synido Live 100 and the Audio-Technica AT2020. Both bass and treble dials are set to neutral, the reverb setting is dry. Other than digital gain, this recording is raw. This is a sound test with the Synido Live 100 and its included microphone. Both bass and treble dials are set to neutral, the reverb setting is dry. Other than digital gain, this recording is raw. And this is a sound test with the Fifine K669 USB microphone. No post-processing other than some digital gain, this recording is raw. Conclusion time then, I think Synido bit off way more than their Life 100 could chew. It's been a while since I struggled this hard to put positive aspects into my conclusion, but at $180 and that's actually already discounted from 200, I think it's just really overpriced. If it were half the price, I'd probably consider it. It is still extremely well built, but it's also just a very expensive toy for the ill-informed streamer. Anyway guys, thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Cheers!